Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Striking a Chord. This week we have a very special episode for you because we are joined by Miss Kalie Shorr.
Hi.
And singer, songwriter, our 2018 Artist to Watch, and co-founder and key player of Song Suffragettes. Kalie, congratulations on release week for your debut full-length album, first of all.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
The album is fantastic. I just want to throw that out there right away.
Thank you. I'm so glad you like it.
I absolutely love it. So the last time we spoke, you were preparing to release your third EP, Awake, which got so much praise from fans and critics both. A year later, you're finally releasing your full-length album, which is something I know you and fans and everybody have been really looking forward to. Tell me how you felt when you officially finished recording the new album, and like what you're feeling now, so close to the release date.
I mean, I think I felt a lot of relief after I finished it, for sure, because it was a longer process. I'd been writing these songs. I think the oldest song on here I wrote May of last year, so like pretty close after Awake was released. And then I ended up writing most of the project in February during this 2-week period where my friend said I was quote-unquote connected to the cloud and just immediately knew and just was, cranking them out. And then we started doing, we took 2 weeks in April to do the bulk of the recording, and then finished the album, I think, beginning of August. So it was kind of it was like a full year of living in the space of this album. And it was definitely a huge relief to have it finished, and then releasing it now and having 4 songs out and hearing fan stories. The songs are like very much so my diary.
Mm-hmm.
And so putting those out into the universe for like a lot of people to listen to is new for me, because Awake, there were definitely some really personal songs on Awake and Slingshot and, Fight Like a Girl, but these are a whole different level of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been interesting from a heart perspective, but at the end of the day, it feels good.
Like with your Awake EP, you had total creative control when it came to making open book, which is something I know is really important to you as an artist. Tell me about how the process for making this album differed from the way you went about making Awake.
Yeah, so Awake, we used some really incredible session musicians that, have played on some really great records in Nashville, and we recorded it at a studio. And it would definitely, was a little bit more on the poppy side, and we had a lot of fun making it. And, like I said, there's some really personal songs on there. But when it came to making this one, I had a completely different album in my head that I'd been writing after Awake. And then I went through a breakup after 6 years, and my sister passed away, and it completely changed the trajectory for my creativity, because I was going back. It was like I was catapulted back to why I started writing songs in the first place, which was to process and, just like 3-minute diary entries set to music.
Right.
And so the songs were so personal, and Skip and I have gotten really close, and after doing 2 projects together and writing, so I was very comfortable with him, but I was like, letting other people into this world feels not exactly right. So when it came to having musicians play on the project, I had members of my live band. Skip's son played drums, and 3 separate friends that I made through Song Suffragettes, who are also artists, Annie Wilgen, Natalie Stovall, and Stevie Woodward, contributed some instruments and background vocals too. And so it was very much so like all in the family, we kept it close, and it was people who understood what the songs are about, the emotions behind it, and I think that kind of passion really translates, even if it's if it's kind of nebulous. I just feel like that energy was transferred to the songs because it was by people who genuinely cared.
Right. And that's amazing that you basically had to start from scratch, and then just the way that it kind of evolved into what it eventually became.
Yeah, totally.
In our previous interview last year, you described your Awake EP as being the big sister who knows what she's talking about. Obviously, a lot has happened in the last year. So how would you describe this era of Kalie Shorr?
The little sister has no idea what she's talking about because she's seen some stuff go down. Yeah, I mean, I was definitely like in a better place when I wrote Awake, and I was comfortable, and then I got the rug pulled out from underneath me, and that's just life, you know, there's ups and downs. And I think that Awake, as far as writing to my younger self, definitely was more mature than the rest of the stuff I'd made. But I think this one is even more mature because I'm admitting that I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right. Which is something we can all relate to.
Yeah. It's just being like, oh yeah, I have no idea. Like, I'm still like, where are the grown-ups? And I'm like, oh my God, I am one. Like,
I know, it's scary, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So having been fortunate enough to hear the album in its entirety, like you said, it's obvious the songs on here come from a place of heartbreak and loss and falling apart, rediscovering and learning the kind of lessons that can only come from experiencing pain that completely changes you and how you look at life in general. And I think these 13 songs on Open Book are a perfect reflection and expression of all of that. So talk to me about how therapeutic it was for you to release all of those emotions that you were dealing with and how it helped you process, all of that pain, essentially.
Yeah, so everyone I wrote the project with was a really close friend as well. And I think Lullaby was also one of the first songs I'd written for the album, and it was the first song I ever wrote with this writer named Robin Collins. And I wrote it with her and my good friend Will Stone, and him and I used to be we were couple friends. So with our respective partners, we were we were really close, the four of us. And then we both went through breakups at the same time. So when we were writing Lullaby, it was very much so our story. And we'd both been so close to that and seeing, what had happened and where we related. And it was my first time writing with Robin, and she started the write with a prayer and said, I hope we say something people need to hear and something we need to say. I hope that we don't put in one word extra or leave out one word that needs to be there. And it was so centering, and I was like, oh, wow, we're doing something important today that it was just, I don't know, it just really set the tone for that write. And Lullaby was such an important song for me to write regarding the breakup. And then as I moved forward and was processing a lot of emotions, Candy Carpenter is one of my best friends, and we just kind of went back to basics as far as sitting on my living room floor writing songs because, that's what I did as a teenager. I just sat on the floor, and, the difference was this time around we had like $2 wine. So we would drink pretty heavily and write some songs. We wrote Gatsby, Alice in Wonderland, and Escape all on my living room floor.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and with Gatsby especially, I had called her with the idea. I was like, can you come over? I want to write this song called Gatsby about all the, absolute, shenanigans that I've been up to that I need to stop doing because they're making my problems worse. And who better to write a song like that with than your best friend? So we were just, when we were just talking around the idea, I was like, the idea I had was I pity party like I'm Gatsby. And then I was like, and she was like, well, why? And I was like, well, people like me because I'm happy. And she was like, well, that rhymes, so that's the song. And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. And the funny thing about that is because she's my best friend, she can look me in the eye and just be like, what do you want to say? And I was like, well, it's not that I like dating a-holes. It's just that I do it because I have a weird relationship with my dad. And she was like, well, that's the first line. And I was like, oh my God, no one's going to stop us. We can just say that. Who even knew? It was definitely a really, really interesting process writing these songs and just realizing that I can technically say anything I want to. Technically. I mean, there's some things I shouldn't, but no one was going to stop me. And then when I played F You Forever for my manager, he was like, well, I guess this is where we're going. And I was like, yay.
And it's amazing to hear the songs and then hear you tell the story about how that came together. It just makes so much sense not hearing it. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
I think anyone who knows you, whether personally or just as an artist, will be able to see and hear all the different influences that you incorporated into the new album. Everything from Miranda and the Dixie Chicks to Taylor, Avril, to 2000s pop punk bands, and then obviously some 90s rock as well. So talk to me about how you musically crafted the album, because to an outsider, it's like you have all these incredible influences that sound like you just threw them all into a blender and then out comes this perfectly molded sound. And it's literally nobody else is doing it.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I definitely think there's a lane for that in country, because if you're talking to country fans and seeing like the playlist that people put my music on, like it's not just strictly country. It's everything from Dixie Chicks to Avril. And those just happen to be like what I grew up playing, everyone you just listed, and I was obsessed with Alanis Morissette as a teenager. And I mean, I still completely am, but I mean, her lyrics, like, I don't even think I realized until the past few years like how much she influenced me. And once I dove back into her catalog, and I was like, oh my God, like these shaped me as a songwriter, because when I was like the angstiest of the angsty teenagers, I was just completely absorbing Jagged Little Pill. So what happened with the, as far as following my influences, was I went back and looked at how they made those records. And two of my favorite albums of all time are Tuesday Night Music Club by Sheryl Crow and Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette. And Jagged Little Pill was made with Alanis and her producer Glenn Ballard in a one-room studio. And Tuesday Night Music Club was Sheryl Crow and a bunch of her friends who just every Tuesday night would get together and play these songs. And I looked at that and I was like, well, that's kind of how we're doing it, and that feels so right and so true, And, just pulling from those places. And I played a lot of the guitars on the album. I played all of them on F You Forever and World Keeps Spinning. And that was really empowering, because I got to make the songs exactly what I wanted them to be like, and the collaborative thing with Skip was amazing. But, it makes sense that my influences came through more than anything, because I was, producing it for the first time.
Right. And that's amazing that it just all came together the way it did, because, I mean, the sound is just like anyone who, even if for anyone who doesn't know you personally, who just follows you on Instagram and feels like they know you personally, you go and listen to the album and it all kind of comes full circle and just makes total sense. You know what I mean? Like, it all sounds like you.
Well, I think like lyric is so important to me. Like it's more important than anything. And if I wasn't a musician, I'd still be a writer for sure. But I think that something I've always cared about is making my lyrics should sound like how I talk, like using the same vernacular and just feeling like a conversation with me. And I think that was something that came through on this project more than anything. And I love Twitter. I think it's so fun. I love writing tweets. I love interacting with my fans on there. And I think that like Gatsby just sounds like an extended tweet.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to get to that question a little bit later, but I'll jump to it since you brought up Twitter. Oh God, let me find it. Sorry.
No. It's okay.
So you're a big fan of 90s music, and you said on Twitter this month that 1998 was the best year for music. So even though we're jumping ahead a little bit, tell me your 3 favorite albums or songs to come out of the 90s in general, and what you loved most about that particular decade.
I love this question so much. Definitely Jagged Little Pill, for sure. I already mentioned that. Yeah. Third Eye Blind, self-titled. That was 97, and then the singles came out in 98. And then, let me think. Vertical Horizon.
Yes.
Everything You Want is a great record, top to bottom.
Yep.
Those are 3 albums that I don't skip a single song on.
Yeah, awesome.
For sure. Yeah, those are probably my 3.
Speaking of Twitter, I know you are hilarious on Twitter, and everybody loves following you on there. I feel like your fans, like, the next thing they're waiting for, like, is like a book of whether advice, like in the form of tweets from you, I think.
So we have some really fun merch ideas involving Twitter. So that's all I'll say on that. But I'm really excited. I mean, I never thought, because I did go a minute without releasing music. Like the last project I released was January of last year. So we're almost coming up on 2 years of me not releasing music, other than like the Wake remix and holds from that. So in the meantime, I was just like, just really loved Twitter, but I never thought that was going to be like something that got me a ton of followers. And I've had my tweets reposted to meme accounts with like 5 million followers, and then I'll check my DMs sometimes, and I had this guy like yesterday be like, wow, like, I just thought you were like a hot girl who was kind of funny, but your music's really good. I was like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, you're definitely somebody I would recommend anyone, like whether they know you musically or not, like to follow on Twitter just for pure entertainment, because you're absolutely hilarious.
Thank you.
Going back to Open Book, though, so the song I'm most intrigued by when I listened to it, for sure, was Alice in Wonderland. And I know you wrote that with Candy Carpenter. Can you tell me where the inspiration for that song came from?
Well, a very true story. So, yeah, I mean, I went through this breakup, and 3 weeks after it ended, he took a girl I'd been friends with for 4 years to Warped Tour with tickets he got me for my birthday, and I'm not salty about it at all.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so, and I just, like, I'm not the kind of person who gets, like, very spiteful. I mean, you see that side of me on FU Forever for sure, but I just was like, you know, obviously we stopped being friends after they started seeing each other or whatever happened, but I just was like, you know what, you were someone I cared about, and, like, I care about you enough to tell you to, like, not do it. It's not worth it. Like, the same thing's going to happen, and, you know, I was like, I've been you. I understand why you like him, obviously, but, you know, I just 10 out of 10 would not recommend. And so I came home from the bar one night with Candy, and we sat down at my piano, and, like, we were definitely, like, some of the songs when we wrote them, we were tipsy, but this one we were, like, absolutely just, we were just straight up drunk, capital D drunk. And I started the chorus, and we filled in the blanks, and at first we were kind of kidding about it, and then the next morning I woke up, and I replayed what we'd written, and then I filled in the blanks, and then she woke up, and I was like, hey, so I finished this song, and she was like, oh, my God. She was like, did we write that when we were drunk? I was like, yeah.
It's an amazing song. I think
Thank
it's
you.
probably one of my favorites on the album.
Thank you.
The song that definitely hit the hardest when listening to it, though, and something that I was emotionally not ready for, was The World Keeps Spinning.
Yeah.
The way you describe what it feels like when we lose a loved one is so accurate and honest and just a heartbreaking, beautiful way. So first off, I want to thank you for writing that song. Right after, so I had, personal story, I had actually lost my gram about a month ago. So hearing this album after that was just like, especially that song was like, oh my God, you put it in a way that so many people can relate to.
Thank you.
Can you talk to me? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you just want to know, like, where it came from and stuff. So I lost my sister in January, and that was the first song I wrote after she passed away. I just came home and sat down at the piano and started the chorus, because, like, my thought was just like, you know, you never know what people have going on behind closed doors, and for me it was such a wake-up call to go through something, because it's the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. And I'm walking around, and, you know, I'm going to the grocery store and don't have the energy to smile at the cashier. And, you know, sometimes people would be like, well, that's so rude or whatever. And I remember I was walking into a store, and I was just like, I'd been crying for, like, days at that point, and I was just such a zombie. And someone held the door for me, and they looked at me, and they're like, well, you could say thank you. And I was just like, oh, my God. Like, and I didn't want to, like, throw that in their face, so I just was like, yeah, sorry. But you just don't know what people have going on. And so, like, I was just like, wow, like, this person's just having a nice, normal day, and the world is spinning just like it always does, and my world, like, feels like it's ending, you know? And so I sat down and I wrote that with Robin Collins and Skip, my producer. And Skip had lost his niece in the same way the Halloween before to a heroin overdose. And so we wrote it from a really real perspective for both of us. And Robin had lost her dad, and we had all understood that feeling. So when I brought in that chorus, they were like, wow, I get it. And Skip ended up singing background vocals on that one, because it really is like his song too. So that was really special to get to, you know, say that together. And we ended up dedicating the album to Ashley and Megan. So
that's amazing. And I'm so sorry for all of your losses.
Thank you.
I feel like anyone who's ever been through a breakup or was betrayed by someone they loved and trusted will really be able to relate to songs like Messy and The One and FU Forever. which we know as of Friday, people are already like flooding your,
Yeah.
your socials with that song. Because again, the details that you include and the way you don't hold back at all, and this is seen throughout the whole album. So talking about the inspiration behind those songs, obviously I know you went through a breakup after 6 years, but how those songs particularly came together.
Yeah, I mean, they were just all thoughts that I'd had, and like they really, really feel like journal entries. I wrote Messy last summer, just, you know, thinking about how you can have such a great relationship until the moment you don't. And, you know, the irony of us living this really, like, put-together life and then it all just blowing up and being like, oh, my God, was this all just, like, underneath the surface and I had no idea, like, you know, processing that. Because it was a super messy breakup. I mean, I lost my entire old friend group in the middle of that. And so that's, you know, part of, I mean, you know, he dated some of them, as you hear in FG Forever, and I'm just saying dated because, you know, it's an interview. But if you hear the song, you'll know what it actually was. So that was probably the toughest part, was not having my friends to go to about it, because, I mean, it was just a mess. So that's where Messy came from. And the one I actually wrote with Savannah Kais, my best friend and co-host of my radio show, and Skip, the morning after we broke up. So it had been 10 hours, and I'd had this write scheduled, and I showed up, and they were like, hey, what's up? And I was like, well, and it just, like, poured out, and it was like, I didn't even have time to process it before I wrote the song, so it just, like, came out like a total journal entry. And then FE Forever, I wrote with Candy Carpenter and Annie Wilgen, who's one of my oldest friends in Nashville. We met working at a hotel together when we were, like, 19. And Annie had just gone through a breakup, and Candy had gone through a similar breakup a few years before. And we just, like, said it. We just said what we wanted to say. And, you know, it's definitely an angry song. And I think there's this kind of trope that's, like, you know, angry country woman, you know, man-hating. But, like, if you listen to the song, it's like, he deserved to have a song like that written about him. And even more so than that, it's not a vengeful thing. It was just, like, I needed to say it. Like, it was real. It happened. And it felt, more than probably any song on there, it felt so good to just frickin' say it, you know? So, yeah.
I know we're limited on the time that we have. There's two more songs that I really, really want to ask you about. So Vices feels like that moment where the wheels have come off completely emotionally. And, you know, like you said in the song, the devil is paying rent. Would you say this was like your low point in terms of how you were dealing with everything that you were going through?
Absolutely. And the way the songs fall on the record is very much so chronological.
Okay.
They were written at different times, but it's like the different pieces of what happened. And Too Much to Say is like the thesis statement, and it's like, because I'm such a literary nerd, and I think I was a journalist in my last life, and I just like love writing. And so I was like, let's approach this like it's an essay, like it's actually, you know. So Too Much to Say is like the thesis statement, tells you what you're getting in for. You have a chance to back out if you're not ready for it. And then Escape starts, you know, kind of laying the foundation for the themes and like elaborates more on like my background and where my life really started. Then it goes into the breakup, then it goes to processing it. Then When You Hit the World Keeps Spinning, it comes back to the family stuff. And the songs go Gatsby, You're a Man, and Vices, because Gatsby was when it was like kind of funny that I was a little bit like, you know, coping unhealthily, and I call it heartbreak amnesty, where you have a little bit of time that you can, you know, just kind of refuse to acknowledge anything and just not be an adult, but then you start to run out. And so when you hit Vices, that's definitely was like a really big low point. And I was just like, all right, I'm out of heartbreak amnesty. I have to do something for myself and get out of this hole I've dug. And, you know, it definitely wasn't just, I mean, there was reasoning behind it, but that was definitely the moment that I was like, all right, I'm ready to not do this. And then you have Lullaby and Angry Butterfly, which is the concluding statement.
Which brings me to my next question. So Angry Butterfly is another one of my favorite songs on Open Book. And it's so hard to pick a favorite, but I absolutely love that song. I think it's a perfect closing track, like you said. It's just, again, so accurately describes how we feel after we've basically just been through hell. So I guess my question to you is, how are you doing now that you've come out, the other side of all that pain and all that darkness, and you're such a better and stronger person because of it. You have this phenomenal album that's coming out. It's going to resonate with so many people and such a deep level, and help them the way I'm sure it helped you.
Thank you. Yeah. So Angry Butterfly is a really special song to me because it kind of encapsulates a lot of my grunge influences, which only pop up a few times here and there on the album, and it ends on a really big rocking note. I never thought I'd put emotional crucifixion in a song, but here we are. But I love Angry Butterfly because I have a matching tattoo that I got after my sister passed away with her, and she had a butterfly tattoo, and I just see them everywhere, and she always loved them and had them all over her house, and so having that kind of make a little pop-up on the album was really special. But yeah, I mean, I love that song. It feels like a good ending note, and I like the line that's like, constellations in my eyes and darkness in my veins, because what I wanted to try to say there was like, I still have hope. I still have stars in my eyes. I still, see the happy side of things, but I'm always going to carry this darkness with me because it's part of me now, and that's okay, and doesn't make it a bad thing for me to not even like being jaded, but just carrying that, because suppressing it doesn't do anything. We learned that in Gatsby,
right?
So yeah, that's definitely where that song comes from, and it was one of the last I wrote for the album, and it felt very good to just sum it all up.
Yeah, it was so therapeutic just listening to it. I can't even imagine how it was writing it. So our last two questions. Our last two questions for you before we wrap up. I know you have more stuff to do. You're a real inspiration for people who struggle with just trying to be themselves and feel like they don't fit in because you don't hide the ugly parts of your life. You're 100% unapologetically yourself. As someone in their mid-20s who's still learning as she goes, how does it make you feel when people tell you how much you inspire them? Is it flattering, or does it feel more like pressure to live up to that idea that everyone has of you, or a little bit of both?
No, I don't think so, because I really worked on being unapologetically myself, and I think that being like a role model and a good influence is so much less about not taking tequila shots or saying the F word, and it's so much more about being true to who you are and standing up for yourself. And, F You Forever is definitely an edgy song, but if I had a daughter, I wouldn't hate for her to listen to it if she was, like 10 or 12, because I'm like, hey, don't be in an abusive relationship. Tell them F You Forever and stick up for yourself,
right. Yeah, and absolutely.
So that's, even though it's an edgier concept, it's something I was proud to put into the universe, because, if you're a girl and you get faced with that, leave. And, I feel like there's strength behind it, and I definitely, I'm not perfect, but I also think that I'm really honest about that in my songs, so I don't feel like I've created a narrative where anyone expects me to be, just flawless,
anything else,
grace, and never mess it up.
So one of the things we pride ourselves here is introducing our listeners to new music or artists they may not have heard otherwise. Tell me what new music has been striking a chord with you.
The new Mandy Moore song, When I Wasn't Watching, is so good. I'm obsessed with that.
Not what I was expecting.
It's so good. And she wrote it with the guys from the band Dawes, because she's married to one of the guys, and it's just so good. And I love... Chloe Gilligan's Erase August EP is incredible.
Okay.
And just so honest, and just the way she processes relationships and emotions is just so beautiful to watch. And then, let me look. I'm seeing what else I'm listening to. Oh, there's this band called Sadie Hawkins, Sadie Hawkins Dance. And they have just, all the, throwback feels, and they're incredible. If I was going on tour right now, I'd bring them, but they're amazing. So I would say Sadie Hawkins, Chloe Gilligan, and the new Mandy Moore music.
That's awesome. And such a wide variety there, I feel like, too.
Yeah. Well, you hear it on the album, so.
So before we wrap, go ahead and let everyone know where to find you on social media.
Yes, you can find me at Kalie Shorr, KalieshOrr, and Twitter, tweet me. I love to chat, and Instagram. Yeah, Instagram's the prettier side. Twitter's what I'm actually doing.
So everyone needs to go check out your new album, which is officially available on Friday, that's September 27th. And it's such an amazing album. I can't stress that enough.
Thank you.
You did such an amazing job with it. And we wish that we could talk to you for so much longer, but I know you have a busy week ahead of you.
It will not be our last time chatting, so thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Right.
Yeah, and enjoy the rest of your release week.
Thank you so much. All right, talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.
All right, guys. So that was our interview with Kalie Shorr. And again, I can't stress enough how amazing Kalie is as a singer-songwriter. There's a reason she's been our artist to watch for 2018. And just make sure you go buy the album. Buy it, preferably. If you need to stream it, go ahead. But it's really worth buying the album, guys. Open Book is available Friday, September 27th, and it is just incredible from beginning to end. You will probably need to listen to it with a box of tissue at some points because you're going to feel all kinds of things going through that album.
I just cried during an interview. Thank God for a mute button on a microphone. Just throwing that out there. I had to walk out of the room. Like, it got to me.
I'm telling you, it's like listening to it is just as therapeutic as I'm sure, obviously, it was, for her writing it. So definitely make that one of your first listens on Friday, guys, for New Music Friday. And yeah, so once again, make sure you are subscribing to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. So you can rate and review us, let us know how we're doing. And follow us on our social media. Striking a Chord official, or for Facebook, Striking a Chord 6 on Twitter, and I think just Striking a Chord on Instagram. And this way you don't miss any music news, any new music, and all that fun stuff. So until next time, guys, happy listening.